Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Here we are at 8:30 Eastern Time, an hour later than usual. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, on Long Island. And they have the biggest salt pile you can imagine in the New York City tri-state area. And they have the lowest prices of anyone selling rock salt in the tri-state area. So if you're in the business of cleaning snow up and you have to load up on rock salt, Omni's got the best prices in town. Pelledo, mag, ice pellets, and flakes, and anything else you need. Maybe you even need a new snowblower. So just give them a call at 631-756-1125, and the website is omnitruevalue.com. Jingle Bells, wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. They'll make your house look like the best decorated house in the county with snowmen, penguins, a countdown clock, Santa, the standing three snowmen, and on, I guess they're the snowmen version of the Walenda brothers. And of course, there's always the elf on the shelf. And they're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, 631-957-5106. And the website is liholidaylighting.com. So here we are. Mr. Rayo is here in his, what is that, gray?
Grayish blue, I guess.
Okay, we can live with that.
So, when you mentioned the Walenda brothers, it's immediately how your mind works. Immediately, what pops into my head was that tragedy that occurred back in the mid '70s, where I think the elder statesman of the Walenda family was attempting to walk a tightrope in Puerto Rico on a very gusty, windy day between two buildings, and unfortunately, it was a little bit too gusty for him, and well, I'll leave it. I'll leave it to all of you.
Well, what a thing
to know about what
a thing to reminisce about.
Well, you were the one who brought up that. I haven't thought about the Walendas in 50 some odd years.
Well, you could have let it just pass. I was trying to think of something from the Ed Sullivan Show when they used to have those acrobats on, but the only thing that came to my mind was the Walenda brothers. Oh well.
Yeah, well, they were the most famous. They still have the Walenda family, whatever. I need to apologize right off the bat to all of our folks on the chat board, Joe.
We're not married. You don't have to apologize to me.
Well, the reason that we're running an hour later than normal is that I had a virtual library talk scheduled, or as they say in Great Britain, scheduled for 7 o'clock this evening. And so we moved everything to 8:30 to accommodate the fact that I was doing that library talk. But come 7 o'clock, I wasn't doing the library talk because the person who set this whole thing up wasn't there. And I'm sitting in my seat and I'm watching a buffer wheel going round and round and round, a Zoom buffer wheel saying, the host will let you in shortly. And not only was I not allowed to come in, but also there were also 3 other libraries that had joined in with this sponsoring library, and they couldn't get in. And the fact is also I advertised it on Facebook and also on Twitter, and nobody got in and nobody heard my talk because nobody was able to get in. And so I didn't end up doing a talk tonight. I was very frustrated and very upset for a while. But here I am, 8:30. You and I are here right on schedule to talk about the impending wave of gloom and doom again arriving for tomorrow night and part of your upcoming holiday weekend.
I'm a little surprised. Maybe they decided to just wait till tomorrow morning to do it. I was a little surprised. I thought they'd throw up a flash flood watch for somebody at least. I would think with the soaked ground, if we put down an inch or an inch and a half of rain, some places are going to wind up seeing a little flooding out of that, I would think.
Well, it's going to get in here probably as an average for the tri-state metropolitan area. It looks like it's going to come in here certainly by early afternoon, 1, 2 o'clock. And then as we progress through the remainder of the day tomorrow into tomorrow night, the rains will be getting steadier and heavier, and then we'll spill over into at least a part of Saturday. We are hoping, I guess, that Sunday will be a little bit better. It must be better for all of the trick-or-treaters on Halloween Sunday.
And you got to wait for that upper trough to get out of the way. Take a look on the satellite tonight. The circulation of this thing that we saw it on the guidance of the upper low. We talked about how big the circulation of this storm system is. My God, it covers. You have to go back to Kansas for the back edge. It goes north of Minnesota on the northernmost side and down to Louisiana on the southern side. And then you got this arm that's brought severe weather it still is, over parts of Central and South Florida. And, that extending up northward with the high clouds just about on top of the eastern PA to southern New England zone. This is a pretty big system. And the problem for Sunday, in my view, is the fact that the upper low is going to be weakening, but it's also going to be tracking very slowly to the west, to our west. And we have to wait for it to get far enough north to start getting some drying northwest winds. And that might take a little while. So not that I would throw Sunday away. It may just wind up being a cloudy day with, an isolated shower or something. But overall, it's going to be a struggle this weekend to see sunshine.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But at least if it's just cloudy but dry, that'll do the trick-or-treaters, I guess. And we talk about trick-or-treaters and people, kids going out in the evening. I don't think they do go out at least around here they don't. And when I was growing up in Throgs Neck, I did most of my trick-or-treating in the afternoon.
Right.
Come evening, that was it. That we pretty well stopped by evening. But yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, if it was a school day, you only had about an hour because the sun would go down at 5 o'clock.
Right.
But now you have to wait an extra week to go to standard time. If for one reason, if I'm a Halloween Grinch, okay, I just never cared for the holiday. I'm the Halloween Grinch, and I didn't even buy any candy. I have nothing. So if they come here, they're going to get a lecture. They're going to get a lecture and a dental card.
Well, there's one episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, which is a classic about Halloween, which I won't specifically get into, but most everyone who watches Everybody Loves Raymond knows what I'm alluding to. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, it's different, but I mean, whether or not you're going out in the afternoon or the evening, it looks like, I agree with you. It looks like it's going to be mainly dry. It doesn't look like you're going to see much in the way of sunshine, and it will be a little coolish out there on Sunday. Or may I, since it is Halloween, may I say ghoulish?
Yes, you may.
Sunday in the afternoon and evening.
You said it a couple of days ago, so I knew today he's going to use that ghoulish thing again. All right, let's check out.
I'm going to say it.
Let's check out the radar. We've got rain covering much of North Carolina, and then you've got some scattered showers and storms in parts of South Carolina and into Georgia. There are bands. Actually, the band that you see there going through Northeast Georgia is right. It just left me, so I'm just coming out of that, and that is lifting up to the north. And as we go further west, more bands. In northwestern Alabama. Much of what you see back here is not especially heavy. Back down to Arkansas, and of course those echoes are moving from north to south because they're on the other side of this gigantic upper low. And meanwhile, they'd be getting bands of heavy rains across the Great Lakes and through Wisconsin, northern Illinois. It's not a continuous heavy rain. There, because of the banding nature of it, there are stretches where the rain gets very light or might even stop briefly for a moment, and then there's lighter rain further north up into Wisconsin and eastern Minnesota. So it's a big system. If we had the block still in place, then we would be talking about this upper low probably going out underneath us as a strengthening nor'easter, another strengthening nor'easter. But because the block is breaking down. This is going to inch eastward, and then gradually it's going to turn northeast, moving up through western Pennsylvania and western New York. And that upper feature is going to go from being a closed circulation to an open one. So it'll be weakening as it lifts up northward. So I guess the trick is, in terms of the forecast, is trying to see if it's still holding on to enough strength when the rain arrives tomorrow, that we still have those heavy rains in there in the mix, because over time it'll probably lighten up a bit. I would think it would probably be a little lighter as we get into Saturday. We'll have to see on that. And it's dry on the radar just about everywhere else except for the Pacific Northwest, where we've got what appears to be, I think this is like the 8th day in a row that it's been raining up there in the Pacific Northwest. That's some heavy rains with Pacific energy then moving inland. Now, the Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow has kind of rearranged the risk a little bit, but I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's much to worry about. They have a slight 2% chance of tornado risk in southeastern Virginia and the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula down to eastern North Carolina, and the marginal risk goes a little bit further to the north into southern Delaware and up to about Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and then sort of curls around Fredericksburg and then heads southeast down to about Cape Hatteras. They have the general thunderstorms up to about your house, Joe. So running right along the southern New England coast, cutting cutting Pennsylvania in half from north to south, and then swinging back around in West Virginia. And I don't believe on day 3, because I haven't looked at it, I didn't think to look at it, I don't think they're going to have anything in the east. And southeastern New England, a chance for maybe some isolated thunderstorms there. But the rest of the country is bone dry. And next week, on the day 4 to 8 outlook, I would think it should be mostly subdued. We aren't going to see any big storms develop next week, so they actually have potential to low for days 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that's a good sign. WPC, our friends at WPC, on their rainfall forecast map, they actually cut it back a little bit, Joe. They got like 3/4 of an inch to an inch over New Jersey and southeastern New York, and then they got the tail of that 1.5 inches to about from New York City northeast into southeastern New England and on up into the coast of Maine, and also some rains back in central and western PA on the order of a couple of inches, and then down through West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, and then tailing back down into East Texas, North and South Dakota, western Minnesota, eastern Montana dry, the Southwest dry, and rains from the northern half of California northward for the rainfalls over the next several days on the order of about 1 to 3 and a couple of pockets of 3 inches or more. Looks like the pattern's going to turn colder as we go into as we move through next week. I've been describing it sort of like a stair-step decline. A couple of weather systems moving through, and as each one goes through, it'll turn a little bit chilly. And I think there's a chance that some places in the interior Northeast might see their first snowflakes, perhaps come Thursday. We mentioned it yesterday that the GFS was showing something, and it's still showing it today, and the Europeans got something there too. So it looks like there'll be some kind of front with a wave on it. So and there might be just enough cold air to produce the first cheap thrills for inland areas.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Quite frankly, I was thinking, Joe, Saturday night, perhaps. Well, maybe not necessarily. Yeah, this Saturday into maybe Saturday evening, that perhaps some of the higher elevations of Vermont, New Hampshire, and maybe Western Maine might even see kind of a mixed bag of rain, sleet, or wet snow with this system that'll be coming on through, Friday into the start of the weekend. Maybe sometime during Saturday or Friday night, Saturday, there might be enough cold air around so that not sticking or accumulating snow, but again, in the higher elevation areas, maybe a mixture of snow, sleet, and rain occurring on Saturday.
There's another system behind the one on Thursday for Saturday, and depend, the 12Z run went along those lines. The 18Z run has it, much further east and offshore. But yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, it's got to have to happen sometime along the way. And by the way, here's an interesting note. Bill Rogers posted this in a comment on our show from a couple of nights ago, and I was updating the comments today, and I ran this by Bill Goodman, so I'm waiting to hear back because I didn't have a chance to double check this. But here's an interesting statistic. So we've been, I've been mentioning the fact that we should pay attention to the tropical storm activity and whether the hurricane season has shut down, because if it shuts down early, there is a weakish correlation between hurricane seasons that shut down early and the onset of winter, particularly a front-end loaded winter. And we have not had. First of all, I don't think we've had a named storm in the month of October. I don't think any of the storms were named in the month of October. I could be wrong on that. But in terms of a hurricane, there has not been a major hurricane, not just in the Atlantic during the month of October, and not just in the Pacific during the East Pacific during the month of October, but the bigger surprise is in the West Pacific. And there has not been a major hurricane this month. And that has only happened twice since 1950. Okay. It happened in October of 1977, which then was followed by the lovely winter of 78, 78.
77, 78.
And it happened in the next year in October of 78, which led to the winter of 78, 79, which in that particular winter, the trough axis, I remember this so clearly, it was about 5 degrees further west. So it was actually quite a brutal winter around the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and in those areas. We were kind of on the edge until the latter part of January when we went into that 3-week freezer where we had lows in the single numbers for days and days and days, and then that culminated in fact, I remember that Long Island Sound froze over that year because of how cold it was in that stretch. We didn't go above freezing for the better part of 3 weeks, and that all culminated in the President's Day storm in 1979. So it was kind of interesting that those are the only two instances in the last 50 years. I'm sorry, since 1950 that has happened.
Right.
I'm waiting for.
Right.
I'm waiting to. I'm having that statistic checked, but it's a small subset. But it's just kind of interesting that it wound up being two very active winters in the East, coming off a weak hurricane season during the month of October worldwide.
Well, I remember that winter, as you do, very well. I remember the President's Day storm very well. That was a storm that, for the longest time, Joe, a lot of the LFM, the limited fine mesh that we had to work with way back then, hardly did much of anything to provide us with. In fact, a very funny story. Vin Cardone, who was a professor, an adjunct professor at CCNY, where I was at and where you were, that we used to have the Thursday seminars, and Dr. Cardone came in, and based upon what the LFM did with the blizzard of 78, he said, we have now arrived at that point in time where we no longer have to worry about busted forecasts.
Yeah, well,
that we now have the tools. We now have the tools.
Yeah.
And he said he gave plaudits to the LFM. I had just started work. I attended that seminar. A few months later, I started working for the first time at a private weather service. I was on duty the day before the President's Day storm. The LFM for that storm gave, for, let's say, Washington, Baltimore, based upon what they gave a tremendous, that you used to refer to guerrilla PVA.
Yes.
And yet it only cranked out like 2 to 4 inches of snow for Washington and Baltimore. So instead of looking at the Gorilla PVA and thinking, this might be more than what the model is suggesting, I went with the moisture, remembering Dr. Cardone and saying, we're no longer going to have any more busted forecasts. I had a radio station that I used to do down in Baltimore. I told the guy, his name is John Elder. I said, we're going for 2 to 4 inches for the Baltimore area. He said, oh, really? AccuWeather's going for 4 to 8. I said, well, I don't care what AccuWeather's going for. I'm saying 2 to 4, and I'm using the very best short-term computer-generated guidance forecast that we have. The next morning, 24 hours later, here comes the radio station, WFVR in Baltimore, and I'm talking to John Elder, and he says, well, they just called out the National Guard. Baltimore and Washington had anywhere from 15 to 25 inches. They were comparing that storm to the Knickerbocker storm, the one that caved in the Knickerbocker Theater in Washington, D.C., because there was so much snow back in 1922. New York, we were supposedly right on the edge of the storm, and we were going to get much more than an inch or two. And I was asleep, getting some rest, and my boss, Todd Gross, woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, get up, we need you. I said, why, what's going on? He says, we got a blizzard. I said, where? Baltimore? I said, no, right here, look. And it was snowing to beat the band. And we got like 14 inches of snow.
I was with you the night before.
I do remember that. It was you, it was Andy Gregorio.
I was with you the night before. I won't say what you said, but you were with.
Go ahead, say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. No, I'm not going to say it.
I do remember as I'm trying to get some sleep.
I will remember. I also remember that the LFM right before gave LaGuardia 400ths.
Yeah.
400ths.
Yeah, the good old LFM. Where is that computer guidance model now? But I remember trying to get some sleep, and meanwhile Andy Gregorio was in the weather room, and he's every so often he's saying, holy blank, down in the Carolinas. There was some place in the Carolinas, 6 inches in 1 hour.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I woke up to watching at least for a couple of hours to watch it come down at 5. I think I had like 20 or 21 inches in the Bronx, where we were.
Yeah,
because I live very close to you.
And then very next week, do you remember the following week, another storm, but this one was inland along the Appalachians, and that one brought heavy rain on top of all of that snow, right, causing massive flooding from Washington up to Boston.
The winter was a crazy month. The winter was essentially over after that storm, as I recall. Right. We really didn't get much of anything after that. Even March, we really got nothing. So it just shut down. It was 3 weeks of brutal cold, and there was a 6-inch snowfall at the beginning of it, and I think there was another one somewhere in between, and then we got the big one, and we finished the year right at average for the whole season, and that was the end of that. Well, hopefully we're not, I don't think we're going to be getting that at the end of next week or going into next week.
I remember also that Sunday morning, it happened that the snowstorm on a Sunday night, Monday morning of Washington's birthday or President's Day. On Sunday morning, I remember I saw a report from Old Forge. You remember Old Forge, Joe?
I do.
Old Forge, upstate New York. They had something like a low temperature that morning of 53 below zero. I mean, you talk about your cold weather. That basically was the idea was that huge cold high was going to suppress this storm, and it never really did. I mean, it got up into our area and it dumped all this heavy snow. Boston ended up with hardly anything, but New York got significant snow, and they got creamed from Philadelphia down to Baltimore and Washington.
Before I move on to the teleconnections and the short and long range, just want to acknowledge the chairman, Scott Briller, for hitting Super Chat tonight, reminding us that tomorrow is the anniversary of 2011, the greatest snowfall recorded in New York City of 2.9 inches. On October 11th, it's October 29th, 2011, and that was the biggest snowfall of the whole winter, by the way. Also want to say thank you to Enrique Lopez, who hit Super Chat tonight, saying a small donation for the trick-or-treaters that might otherwise get no treats. Well, they're not getting anything from me. if they come here, and the other thing is they got to walk down a long hill to get to my house, which means that to leave they got to walk it up, and it's about it's a little less. It's about I'd say a third of a mile that they have to walk up. I'm thinking no. I'm thinking no. Either that or their parents will have to drive them here on a dirt road, and I don't think so. Okay, so let's look at the teleconnections going forward because we are, I want to point out a couple of things here. First off, with respect to the NAO, which has been negative since the last week of September. And you could see some ups and downs, but it never got to zero. It stayed negative, and it's still negative. And the members, it's very interesting. After November 1st, you've got some of them going toward the neutral line and pushing to slightly positive, and then you've got some of them that go in the exact opposite direction. And in fact, a couple of members actually take the NAO and make it strongly negative. So if you want to average it out, just probably split the difference between all of them. We'll just say that it'll probably stay negative right through the next 16 days. And the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, which has been positive since about the 17th of October, it stays positive. Then it kind of weakens a little bit, but it's mostly positive on almost all of the members except for a couple for the same time frame for the next 16 days. What's changing, though, and I don't have today's chart of it, but what is changing is the East Pacific Oscillation, which is going negative. And for the first time, Joe, when we look at the upper air, and we'll get to that shortly, you'll see the northwest connection from northern Canada down to the Great Lakes and into the southeastern part of the United States, and that's the EPO in play when the East Pacific Oscillation goes negative. And by the way, I mentioned this the other night. People looking at what happened the last couple of days with the nor'easters saying, "Oh, if it had been snow, we would have had, however many feet that it works out to." No, not only I would contend that this storm in January or December or February with this same upper air setup would have been mostly rain, not just here, but probably pretty far up into upstate New York and New England because of the fact that the East Pacific Oscillation would have been positive and there would be very little cold air in getting involved from Canada. That's the way I see it. That's the way I saw it.
All right. Well, that's all hypothetical because we really don't know, do we? What actually would have transpired, but still, I think at this point in time, as long as it's active, that'll make everybody, all of the weather fanatics out there, happy. Nobody, and Alan Casper said it best: when it's boring for me, it's great for everybody else out there. Well, if it's boring for us, Joe, and also for the weather fanatics, those who are not particularly into storm watching or are turned on by storms are happy, but none of us are happy because we have nothing to talk about.
Right. All right. Here's our storm system for tomorrow, and as big as that upper low was, and just to remind you, as impressive as the circulation looks like on the satellite, it's very spread out. And as a result, there's a 994 low on the GFS this evening, which is not too shabby a low for this time of year in southeastern Missouri. And you see the isobars, they just kind of cover everywhere. The nor'easter is on the far right, moving further to the east. And of course, we had a nice day today in the most of the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states. And there's an onshore flow that is still in place. And by the way, the coastal flooding actually has gotten worse as the week has moved on because of this persistent onshore flow. And I imagine it's going to get a little higher tomorrow with the southeast isobars coming into play. And here's that first arm of rain. You'll notice that the low center just kind of jumps around here. And that's because the upper feature is weakening. and trying to go to our west. So we get this surge of showers that comes in during tomorrow afternoon and evening. Most of that surge goes north, and then the GFS at least fires up another area of rain Saturday morning over Long Island, southwestern New England, up the Hudson Valley, down along the New Jersey coast, and then that lifts up into New England with some lingering showers, and then it blows up another area after that come tomorrow evening. I'm sorry, Saturday evening. And then, as the low finally starts to move up into Maine, into Massachusetts during Sunday morning, where the rain is covering all of New England back to about Long Island, but that'll pull up further to the north. Looks like some heavy rains for Maine and New Brunswick here as the low heads up to near the St. Lawrence River there. Sunday, northwest isobars, some scattered showers being indicated. I think until the upper trough completely passes, I think you have to consider that we're probably going to be struggling with clouds on Sunday. And then finally, Monday, it does get better. Then we've got a little weak front with just a little ripple on it with a couple of showers indicated for Tuesday afternoon. It turns cold, a little colder behind that front. And then we've got another front with a second wave and a colder high behind it. And that's why the GFS is generating that area of blue there in Pennsylvania and on up into upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. This is for Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And then that goes out. And then it turns really chilly toward the end of the week. And then there's another energy coming down from the north, which on this run, this model tried to develop something, and it does offshore. The earlier run had it much further to the left. We'll see how that plays. That probably will depend on what the one on Wednesday night does. Will have an impact, but it will finish off the weekend next weekend on the cold side, in my view.
I agree. I agree. Now, the thing is that I looked at the 10 millibar map centered on the polar regions a little while ago,
which I'm bringing up right now. Go ahead.
And it now appears, at least according to this particular forecaster, that while we will probably see a noticeable dip in the temperatures when we get to about the 6th or 7th of November, that it's going to be short-lived, that it looks like whatever comes on down is going to come across Canada and graze the northern tier of the United States. But then it looks like everything is going to skip back north again and put us back in the same type of bland pattern as we move into the middle part of November. What say you?
That's possible. Well, I'm looking at this run where, still doing the same thing with the vortex moving from Siberia down to near northern Canada. And it looks like, at least on this run, that there's an arm that sort of swings around and goes back over into Europe. And then there's another arm that's trying to come down. So, yeah, it's possible that it's certainly entirely possible. I don't think we're going to see it be continuously cold. I think we're going to get some hiccups along the way. And what we'll have to watch really is that East Pacific oscillation, because that'll be the determining factor. If it is actually probably to go, it was that I saw a day or two ago forecast to go positive again during the middle part of the month. So that's not, that wouldn't be a shock to me if that wound up happening. I don't think the changes that we're seeing by no means imply that we were going to have continuous cold. And it is November, so you're still going to have some volatility here going forward.
Indeed. And you just said it. It's November. It's not December, not January, not February. I don't see anybody yet throwing in the towel on winter, but hope springs eternal, I suppose, for this upcoming season, that perhaps we'll have more than just a 3-week stretch like we did this past winter during the month of February. And by the way, what you just mentioned about the winter of 78, 79, that's what we had. We had one of those 3-week stretches where everything was thrown in but the kitchen sink. But before that and after that, nothing. Yeah. I don't know whether or not we'll see something like that again this winter, but I think we'll be seeing some action.
All right. Well, here's the upper air. I just took it back to where we are back on Monday when we had the blocking high sitting over Hudson Bay. You see the first storm going out, being forced underneath that blocking high, which has been sitting there since then. And now, starting tonight, it begins to break down, and the upper low that's approaching. You look at this and you would think, oh, it's got to go out underneath us, but because that blocking high is weakening so quickly, the upper low starts to turn northward and lift up into interior New England and eventually into Quebec. And then, of course, you've got other energy that's coming down from Canada into James Bay. And now, as I mentioned earlier, here's that upper air connection. You've got a big ridge building up in Western Canada, and that makes that rather deepish looking broad trough that drops down into the east on Wednesday. And the thing is, if you go into the long range, that ridge in the west doesn't hold very much. Eventually, you do get this whole trough swinging and deepening as it approaches the East Coast on Saturday, which is why it has that other low that it forms right along the coast. But then that lifts out. Then we get some ridging here in the east. And then I'm looking out in the west, Joe. Your biggest problem here is, again, it's Canada. Here we have just at the end of the forecast period, which takes us to November 13th, if this verifies. You got a trough off the west coast. Look at the wind flow in Canada. It's coming from the southwest again. That's no good. So we briefly get into the motion, the polar vortex, whether it's triggering this or not. We briefly get into a period where we have that connection to bring down some colder air, and then it just kind of, it tries to disappear as we get toward the end of the forecast period. So there's going to be a lot of variability this month until the atmosphere's chess pieces arrange themselves in the way that they're going to want to lock in for the winter season. And we probably aren't going to know anything about that for another 6 to 8 weeks anyway. So in the meantime, we just have to watch how things move from day to day and which way these models are taking things. I go back to what I said. I was looking. I'll bring it up. I'll pull it up right now. By the way, on the watches and warnings map tonight, there are some flash flood watches that are up. I believe. Let me just get this a little closer so I can see it. They did put. Now, these are all coastal flood warnings. Is this all? No, these are flood watches. So they do have flood watches up for parts of southwest Jersey. And they also, because the colors are so close, let me just double check this. Because I don't think they would have Philadelphia in the coastal flood warning. That doesn't make any sense. Nope. They got that county in a coastal flood warning. So it's not a flood. The flood watches are down in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, I believe. And let me just make it. I'm looking at this map. I can't see the color differences. And so I was actually having this conversation. Yeah, it's a flood watch is down there. I was having this conversation this morning, and we were, just talking about generic things, and somehow, someone, the subject of being able to see color, and men don't see color in the same detail that women do. Women see colors in much greater detail than us guys. And I was never really at seeing the color differences. But there you have it. A lot of coastal flood warnings up for southern New Jersey and down into Delaware and along in the Chesapeake Bay because of that endless onshore flow and a few of those flood watches. Okay, back to what I was going for, which was, and there's I had wind advisories up. It was windy this morning, Joe. They put wind advisories up here when winds are going to gust to 30 miles an hour. So, their threshold here for wind advisories is a lot lower than what it is up in the Northeast. There are some scattered wind advisories up for Northeast Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Western Arkansas, Southwest Missouri, Southeastern Kansas, much of Oklahoma, and that's because of the big upper low. And then you see the flood warnings and the flash flood watches up in the Pacific Northwest. Now, back to what I was getting at, which was the snow cover. And I'm going to pull up the 30-day animation. It's really the amount of snow in North America. We're at the end of October. I don't know where I could get my hands on a normal map, but I can tell you that this is not normal. This is below average in terms of the amount of snow cover. Look at the last 30 days, and I mean, here we are. There was actually more snow cover at one point about 10 days ago than there is now. I mean, look, there's almost nothing. There's almost nothing up
Wow.
in Canada anywhere. But if you want some hope, I did also notice that though it is subpar, if we look at the Siberian snow cover, it actually has expanded fairly rapidly in the last 7 days or so. But even here, too, the snow cover growth this season has been below average. And the yellow area that you see up in the open waters of the Arctic Ocean is the ice. And because of where the polar vortex is, you can see where all the ice is freezing right along the coast there of Siberia, on the Siberia side. But it hasn't quite, it's just now reaching to the north coast of Alaska and the Alfred Phillips land from Wainwright, Alaska. I thought I might have seen him. I know he was here last night. I thought I saw him earlier on the board. But the ice is expanding, but it's not expanding as quickly up north of North America. It's expanding faster in where Siberia is. So the snow cover growth this season has been subpar in both areas.
Yeah, look at the Himalayas. You'd expect the Himalayas by now to have significance. I mean, there's some snow, but it really doesn't look all like that impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had years that by the end of October where the snow cover extends all the way down to 40 degrees north, which is just about,
Right.
Into the northern areas of China. And you just don't have that going on right now. So every day that goes by that the snow cover doesn't increase makes it a bigger and bigger issue with regards to the upcoming winter, in my opinion. I mean, it could change on a dime. You get one good week and suddenly it's snow cover everywhere and it doesn't melt. So that could always change. But for now, the lack of snow cover is also going to impact the quality of cold air that comes down.
Well, for the snow weenies out there, why don't we just simply say it's a work in progress? Hopefully, I won't be saying that for all of you in March or late February, but right now it's still early in the ball game, and as Joe and I will attest to from watching over 4 decades, we've seen it turn on a dime. Case in point, and this is actually a flip flop from what's happening now. We had in the winter of 88, 89, we had that particular year, that particular season, November was abnormally warm. I mean, and in fact, the week before Thanksgiving, we had some devastatingly, brutally severe weather in the northeastern states. In fact, there was a school that unfortunately the wall collapsed and a number of young children who were having lunch in the lunchroom, the wall collapsed on them. And that actually was caused by a sharp cold front, which ushered in a brutally cold air mass into the eastern United States. The rest of November was extremely cold. We had 4 to 6 inches of snow for Thanksgiving morning. And in fact, Joe, you pointed out the day after Thanksgiving at your house was what? 8 degrees or 10 degrees? The
11.
Day after that Thanksgiving morning? 11 degrees. And then we went into December, which was one of the coldest months, not the coldest Decembers, but one of the coldest months we had seen around here in a good number of years. And everybody was saying to themselves, I know, in December, with the frigidity that covered our area, oh, this is going to be a brutally cold winter. Look how cold it's been since mid-November. Look how cold it is now. We can only imagine what it's going to be like in January, February, and March. And guess what? On New Year's Eve, all of a sudden, the whole thing flipped, and we went into a spell of mild weather, and that was it. It was all over. The winter was done.
I think January was like 9 degrees above normal, and February was 9 degrees above normal. December was very cold, but produced very little snow, as I remember. And then it was one of those years. one of those years in the late 80s. I don't know if it was in the same year where we had this sort of supercharged warm front that came through late, I think the day after Christmas, and we got 7.5 or 8 inches out of it. And then the temperature went to 6, the snow stopped, and then the temperature went to 60 that day. And
Right.
it was all gone. I mean, within a day or two, it was just all gone. So yeah, you just don't know. You just don't know where it's going to go.
You don't
So
know. Like I said, it could turn just like that.
So, and even
Now,
if and even if it, and even if it couldn't, if even if you couldn't, it wouldn't matter, because my friendship with the Ricardos means more to me than all the money on earth.
now,
Okay,
could you allow me to share a couple of screens here?
one moment, please. Let's turn on the Joe Rayo. I got a new mouse, by the way, and it's made my life so much easier. My old mouse was lost its mind, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't highlight anything. I would highlight things and it would highlight like half of it or one side, made cutting and pasting nearly impossible. And I thought the battery was fine. It just that the contact part of it got all scratched up. So anyway, it lived a long life though. I think I've had that mouse over 2 laptops, so it lasted like about 6 or 7 years. So I went and bought an $11.99 new one at Walmart. Yes, you can share now.
Oh, all righty. I have some interesting news. We're going to have probably a major storm coming our way in the next 24 to 36 hours, but it is not a terrestrial, it is a space storm. And I'm going to share the screen here with this and show all of you what I'm talking about. There was a major flare that erupted on the sun earlier today. You can see it. It's right there on your screen, literally right in the middle of the sun. Now, there are various categories that the Space Environment Center lists for solar activity and solar flares. There are C flares, which are M flares, which are moderately strong. And the strongest flares of all are the X-rated flares. And this was an X flare, Joe. And take a look where it is. As I said, right smack in the middle of the sun, shooting out toward us these subatomic particles directly toward the Earth. Now, when this flare occurred, 8 minutes after it took place, and this was at about 11:30 this morning, about 8 minutes later, because it takes light 8 minutes to reach from the sun, the 93 million miles, 186,000 miles a second, to reach the Earth. Right after that, we had what is called a sudden ionospheric disturbance. And let me just stop sharing this screen for a moment, and let me move on now to another graphic here. Here we go. This is the area of where if you were a ham radio operator or if you are listening on shortwave, the area of red for a while this afternoon became totally and completely blacked out. You could not get any communication in or out of the red area. Very difficult in the green region. Other areas, well, they were on the night side of the Earth, not facing the sun, so no problems here in China and Russia, and also no problems up in Alaska or northern Canada. But right here, a major disturbance for radio communication due to, again, that massive flare that erupted earlier today. And now the Space Environment Center has issued an alert for a severe geomagnetic storm to occur sometime tomorrow or tomorrow night, which should produce a dramatic display of the northern lights, not just across Canada, but maybe pushing all the way on down into central and maybe even southern United States. Folks who live maybe in Texas and down in Arizona and maybe even Arkansas may get a chance to see the northern lights tomorrow night. It would be possibly an amazing display. P.S. Of course, here in our neck of the woods, and even down where you are, Joe, all that we have discussed now, the upper trough, the
Yeah.
disturbance moving north and eastward, everything is pretty much going to shut it all out. So if it does occur, we ain't seeing it because the weather is not going to allow for a view of the beautiful northern lights display that may very well be coming our way
And
tomorrow or tomorrow night. And
this
so it goes.
and this is tomorrow night. Well, you know what? I might just clear out a bit tomorrow night down here. Well, it's not impossible.
Well, take a look because
Oh, hold on.
this
Hold on. Oh, I thought I heard a gunshot. Somebody might be out there shooting squirrel. Go on. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
somebody actually shoots squirrels outside of your house.
Well, no, they hunt in the woods here, so I don't know if somebody's out there hunting. I'm teasing about the squirrels, but I don't know if they could be shooting squirrel to get for dinner. I don't know what they're doing, but yeah, they do hunt around here. So go on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, people, Joe, they invest money in going on tours or trips up to Iceland around this time of the year, or up in the northern Canadian prairies. I have a friend of mine who drove from San Diego into the prairies about a month ago simply to see the northern lights because he always wanted to see them and photograph them. It's unusual for the northern lights to get as far south as our latitudes or even further south down into the 30-degree range. This solar flare that occurred earlier today, now of that. So maybe from time to time tomorrow night, if it's clear or partially clear, step outside and look to the north because you just may get an unusual glimpse out your way of the northern lights. You've done everything else. You've managed to miss out on the hot weather.
Right.
You've managed to see the colder temperatures before us up here. So why not?
So why not?
Exactly. In your area, see a northern lights display in Georgia.
I can go. There's a mountaintop not too far from me that I can go to. That's actually would be perfect because it's about 3,500 feet up, and the view is panoramic. I mean, you can see all the way around in all directions. So that might be a cool place to go if I can manage to drive up the 2-lane road that is actually a 1-lane road. When I say 1 lane, I mean literally 1 lane for 2 ways.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll keep you.
And you're passing Mack trucks along the way.
Lovely.
Yes.
I'll keep you posted. There is an index called the Planetary K Index, and it runs from 0 to 9. When it gets to 7, and it has on occasion, that's the signal. Go outside and take a look because then the aurora might be visible as far south as the New York City area. When it gets to like 8 or 9, which is rarely ever seen, and this certainly has the potential of doing that, if I see it get to 8 or 9 tomorrow night, I'll either message you or give you a call and say you ought to step outside if it's clear, because then it should be visible even down as far south as where you are. But again, for all of us up here, it's going to be a moot point because it doesn't. Dennis Cassia, one of our folks on the chat board, mentioning that it is an X flare that is Earth directed, but he also has something he calls Spode's law, and Spode's law is kind of like Murphy's law for astronomers. Spode's law means, generally speaking, something great is about to happen, but you're going to be screwed because you're not going to see it because of the weather. So Spode's law is in effect for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
For all of you Northern Light watchers.
All right, let's go do a little Briller Jeopardy here. Tonight, Joe, you have to guess the years of the 5 greatest snowstorms that have occurred, the 5 biggest snowstorms. 3 out of 5 is a passing grade, and so we could see if you can come up with these.
Now, is this Central Park or for various locations?
No, it's for Paducah, Kentucky. Of course, it's for Central Park, for Christ's sake.
I mean, my wife has a cousin who lives in Kentucky, so I could call her up and ask to help me out. It'd be like a phone a friend, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like a phone a friend. So you're asking for the 5 greatest snowfalls?
Right, from snowstorms, not 24-hour, but total snowstorm, total from the snowstorm. It could have been over 2 days, but not a 24-hour measurement, but over, could be a snowstorm that started on one day and finished on another.
Well, for years and years and years, it was very easy to mention what was number one, because number one was always the post-Christmas Day snowstorm in 1947, which I think had 26.5 inches of snow, and that was the top for something like 60 years. And then all of a sudden, in this last 20 years, we've had a couple of snowstorms that have surpassed that, and I'm not even sure what the years were. I think one of them was in 2006, and the other was, I don't know, 2015 or 2016, and I can't even tell you if it was 26.5 inches in 47. I think those two storms surpassed that by something like 1 or 2 inches. Not a tremendous amount, but I remember one of those two storms was the storm that the NAM had forecasted like a humongous amount of like 30, 35 inches. And the other models were saying like, oh, no, it's only going to be 5 or 10.
Right.
And we poo-pooed the NAM. And then suddenly at the last minute, all of a sudden, all the other models said, oh, yeah, the NAM is right.
No, wait a minute. We did not poo-poo the NAM, okay? We did not poo-poo the NAM.
Well, I did. Maybe you didn't, but I did.
You did. I didn't. We weren't working together. Were we working together for that one?
No.
At that point, no. So definitely no. I can tell you. I can tell you right now. I did not poo-poo the NAM on that one. I was chanting the NAM's praises for the 2 days going into it for that particular storm, because I knew it had the right idea.
The GFS, the Canadian, the European were all saying a moderately large storm of 5 to 10. And I said, look at the NAM. Look at the NAM. What are they coming up with now? 27 inches or 28 inches? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Guess what? It happened.
And that, by the way, and that was January 22nd, in what was a lousy winter, but that's where a window opened up for 3 weeks in the month of January where it got cold enough. That was in that El Nino year. And yeah, January 22nd, 23rd, 2016, 27.5. Right. And you mentioned, did you say 2006? Did you mention 2000? Right. Yeah, that was number 2, February 11th and 12th, 2006, 26.9. So 27.5, right. 26.9. And you also mentioned the December 26, 27 storm of 1947, which was 25.8. So you named the top 3 in your soliloquy there, and so that leaves you with 2 left.
All right. Well, after 47, again, for many, many years, when we always talked about, the biggest storm was the 47
the big storm we've been talking about. Right.
And after that, we always said, well, the 47 storm had like 25, 26 inches of storm. That was more than 4 or 5 inches more than the legendary 1888 storm, although in 1888 they had stronger winds, much higher drifts, colder temperatures. But 88, I think, had around 21 inches.
And that was number 4, March 12th through 14th, 1888, 21 inches. That was over 3 days. And so you've got 4 of them. So now there's just 1 left, which would be ranked number 5.
All right. Well, I must pause and probably stop here. I think now that but after 1888 we had any number of storms that went back into like the 1930s or 40s that produced like 17, 18 inches. But I think that in remembering There's been a bit crazy 20 years that we've had, 20, 21 years.
Well, I'll give
I
you.
think that maybe we actually had like one or two storms that maybe fell right behind 1888 in the last 2 decades.
Yes, the answer is yes. So it's 3 of the 5 were in the last 20 years. 3 of the 3.
Well, what about 96? What about the blizzard of 96? Right? Was that one of them, or
no? Not in New York City. Not measured at the park. I don't think it was. No.
I thought the blizzard of 96 had like 20 inches or at Central Park.
Well, it might be just under number 5. Okay. So.
Okay. Which was?
February 25th, 26th, 2010.
Why don't I remember these? They're all melding into one big lump here. This is crazy. But, Joe, when we were growing up in the 60s and when we were starting in the business in the 70s, who would have thought that we would have, in the first 2 decades of the 21st century, 3 or 4 storms that dumped in excess of 20 inches of snow, or in the latter part of the 1990s? I mean, it's crazy. That would have been like.
And where I lived, I had more than that.
Right, you had that. What was the storm that gave you 36 inches?
Well, that was the Snowmageddon storm of 2013, and then there was the half blizzard in 2014. December. The half blizzard was January of 2015, and that gave me 24. There's a few others peppered along the way where we got over 20, and a lot of times the city only got half that. So I had quite a 20-year experience from 2000 to 2000, from that in that 20-year stretch. A lot of 20-inch snowstorms on Long Island.
And I remember the day before New Year's Eve in it was in 2000. It was a Saturday, New Year's Eve night in the year 2000, or not New Year's Eve, the day before, December 30th, 2000. And it's a Saturday morning. I'm sleeping soundly, and I get a phone call at like 5:30 in the morning from my news director telling me, "Joe, we need you. Come on in." I'm looking out the window, and there's already like 5 inches of snow on the ground. I was living in Levittown at the time, and I'm looking at a drive from Levittown, Long Island, on the Northern State Parkway to the Cross Island, over the Throgs Neck Bridge to Yonkers, in moderate to actually, it was mostly like S+.
Yes.
And I know that wasn't among the top 5, but it did dump at least a foot of snow on New York City, and that stands out because when you have to drive in these things, and it's like, you don't have to do that anymore, Joe.
Thank God for that.
We don't have to do it anymore.
We do not. All right, let's. Oh, look at me! I can switch us. Look at that! I didn't even know I could do that. Look at that! I moved us. I switched sides. Look.
Oh, all right.
I could do that.
So you're over there. Now you're over there now.
No, I was. Now I'm the other way. I'm back to where I was.
Now you're over there.
Would you rather be on the left or I don't know? Do you want me on the left or on the right?
Oh, I don't know. If we put you on the right, it would be a right-wing conspiracy, wouldn't it?
Oh, I'm sure it would. All right, let's not adventure down into another political path.
No.
The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight, brought to you, just speaking of all this winter weather, a reminder that you might need to get salt, so do so. At OmniTrueValue.com is the website. OmniTrue Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125. And they have the best prices around anywhere in the New York City tri-state area. Wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs, whether you want your home decorated for the holiday or you are in the business and you're decorating and you need decorating stuff, give them a call because they got plenty in stock, by the way. And they're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, also serving everywhere in the tri-state area and even beyond that. Their telephone number is 631-957-5106, and the website is liholidaylighting.com. So you and I will be back on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, correct?
Yes, yes, and Mrs. Rayo will be on with Halloween Thriller Jeopardy.
All right, very good. All right, so we'll see you on Sunday. See you on Sunday, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the super chat hits tonight. Oh, now you're in a single shot. That was lovely. What was that? Are you still hacking that cough, right?
I still am.
Oh,
It'll be with me, I guess, for a while.
hang on. Let me move those out. Let's get us back on full screen. I mishit a key here. So I got to go do this. There we go. So now we're back. So thank you to the super chat hits tonight from the chairman, Scott Briller, and from Enrique Lopez. Thank you both. And what else do I have to say? Oh, thanks to everybody for being here, of course. Thank you, everybody, for our loyal audience. Thank you very much for being here on another night, and we will be back on Sunday at 11 a.m. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.